Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Savage Sunday by William W. Johnstone and J. A. Johnstone. Narrated by P.J. Ochlan. Chapter 1. Wyoming Territory. Duff MacCallister sat on his horse, Sky, with Bear Creek behind him, watching as Elmer Gleason, Wang Chow, and two other cowboys worked to round up the cattle he would be taking to market. Duff, who had arrived in America some time ago, had been a cattleman in Scotland. The cattle he raised were Black Angus, and he had introduced the breed to Wyoming. Elmer, who was his foreman, came riding over to him.
"You ain't moved in so long, I didn't know but what you was a statue someone put up here," he teased.
"Sure now. And what would be the need of my moving when there's a good man handling things?" Duff asked.
Elmer smiled.
"I'm a good man, all right, and I'm glad you could see it."
"I was talking about Wang."
"Wang Chow? Why, that heathen wouldn't know the difference betwixt a cow and goat if and I wasn't here to tell him."
Duff knew that Elmer calling the Chinaman a heathen was all in jest, for though he often used that sobriquet when referring to Wang Chow, the two men were actually very close friends.
"Perhaps Wang is a good man because you made him a good man," Duff suggested.
"Yeah, now that's the truth of it," Elmer replied.
"What's the count?" Duff asked.
"We've got 420 rounded up so far," Elmer said. "I cipher that out to figure we'll need 80 more before we have the full gather. We'll have 'em all in before dark so's we can leave first thing tomorrow morning."
"I've scheduled 2 special trains with 15 cattle cars each for the shipping of the cattle. One will be here at 11 and the other at 12. You'll have to see to the loading. The lass and I will be for taking the 10 o'clock passenger train, so we'll be in Cheyenne before the cattle arrive."
"So Miss Megan is going with you, is she?"
"Aye, 'tis a trip she's been looking forward to."
Elmer chuckled.
"No more'n you, I'm betting."
"Sure, and 'tis a smart fellow you are,"
Duff replied with a laugh.
"Well, don't you be worrying none about them cows. On account of me and Wang will get the trains loaded," Elmer said.
Cabin, 5 miles west of Cheyenne, Wyoming Territory. The cabin had been abandoned when the 4 men found it, and it showed the disrepair from being a long time empty, with broken windows and missing doors. The only improvement they had made was to get the stove back in working order. Bart Jenkins used his hat to protect his hand as he lifted the coffee pot off that same stove and poured coffee into his tin cup. There were 3 others around the stove. Mo Conyers, a cowboy who had been fired from the last 3 ranches where he had worked. Slim Gardner, whose honest work had been minimal, from teamster to mopping the floors in a saloon. The third was a black man, and nobody knew much about his background, nor did they even know his name. He identified himself as Black Liberty, but Jenkins was almost certain that wasn't his real name.
"How much money are we talking about?"
Slim asked.
"It's hard to tell," Bart said. "It's a bank. How much money is in a bank?"
"Well, I don't know," Mo said. "I ain't never robbed me no bank before. I mean, you can get yourself shot holding up a bank."
"You won't be holding up the bank," Bart said. "Neither you nor Black Lib."
"What? Why not? You ain't leaving us out, are you?"
"No," Bart answered. "I've got a job for both of you. Black, they's a saloon in Hillside called the Hog Waller in the town, and right across the street from it is Sykes' hardware store. They's a bench in front of that store, and that's where I'm going to want you to be, 'cause you can tie your horse off right there. Don't worry none about being colored. They's 2, maybe 3 families of colored people in town, so nobody will pay you no never mind. You sit there while Mo goes into the saloon. Mo, what you're going to do when you go into the saloon is commence a shooting up the place. But you better watch out for the bartender on account of he's likely to have him a shotgun under the bar. Don't stay long enough for anyone to shoot back. Then you run out of the saloon, climb up on your horse, and ride out of town heading north. They's only the sheriff and one deputy in town. Soon as they hear the shooting, they'll more'n likely come a-running after you. Black, soon as you see the two lawmen chasing after Mo, you get on your horse and chase after them. Mo, after you've come out of town a little ways, find yourself a rock to get behind and wait for 'em. With Black coming up behind 'em, you'll have the sheriff and his deputy caught betwixt the two of you, and you can ambush 'em. Ought to take no more'n you two to shoot the sheriff and his deputy. While you two is taking care of them, me and Slim will ride in and rob the bank. Won't have no problem with it, 'cause the sheriff and deputy will more'n likely be dead by then. Everyone else will still be thinking about the shooting that happened in the saloon. We'll meet back at the cabin, but ride around a lot so's to throw anyone that might be a-chasing you off track. Don't be a-leading 'em to the cabin. That way, we'll always have a place to hide out," Bart said.
"What time we going to do this tomorrow?" Mo asked.
"Right afternoon. That way there'll be some customers in the saloon, but not likely so many as to cause you any problems when you commence to shooting the place up."
"Damn if that ain't about the best damned idea I've ever heard," Mo said.
Chugwater, Wyoming Territory. Biff Johnson, owner and proprietor of the Fiddler's Green Saloon, was opening a little earlier than he did on most days. He had told Duff he would be there when they came into town this morning. As he reached for the coffee pot, he knocked something from the shelf, and reaching down, he retrieved the pennant. Holding the pennant in his hand for a moment, as if studying it, it was a symbol of his past, a 33-inch by 27-inch swallow-tailed flag of the kind that had been hand-stitched by New York City seamstresses during the Civil War. It featured a field of 13 red and white alternating stripes and a blue canton with 35 stenciled gilt stars, forming a circle within a circle, plus 4 more stars, one in each corner of the canton. As the former Sergeant Major Benjamin Franklin Johnson held the flag, Custer's last battle came to him with a clarity and intensity as great as it was on the day it happened. June 25th, 1876. Custer had already detached Benteen's battalion, as well as the trains. Then he continued north, along with Reno's battalion. When they reached the South Fork of the Little Bighorn River, he held up his hand and stopped the column. "Major Reno!" Reno came to the front, saluted, and reported to Custer. "Major, I want you to take your 3 companies across the river and attack the village from the south. Maintain pressure against them. I will go a little farther north, cross the river, and attack from the other side." Custer smiled. "This way, we will have the devils between us." "Sir, do you think it is wise to split your command?" Reno asked. "Major, you will do as I have ordered," Custer said firmly. "Yes, sir," Reno said with a salute, then rode to the back of the column to give orders to his battalion. "Sergeant Major Johnson," Custer called after Reno left. "Yes, sir," Biff answered. "I want you to detach yourself from Captain Keogh and go with Major Reno." "But, sir, I would rather be with my own troops." "I know you would, Sergeant Major, and I would rather have you with us, but Reno is untried. I would feel better knowing that you were with him." "Yes, sir," Biff replied, the disappointment obvious in his voice. Custer continued toward the village, while Reno, as ordered, pressed against the bottom end of the village where the Hunkpapa Lakota were located. After his first engagement with the Indians, Reno dismounted his men and had them form a skirmish line. "Sir, the colonel ordered us to attack the village," Biff said.
We aren't attacking, we're defending. We're cavalry, sir. We should stay mounted. When you get your own command, Sergeant Major, you can make the decisions, Reno replied in a high-pitched, frightened voice. But you aren't in command, are you? I am. Now form a skirmish line like I told you to. We won't be able to sustain a skirmish line, Biff said. Do as I tell you, Sergeant Major, Reno ordered. Yes, sir. The result of Reno's incompetent leadership was exactly as Biff had predicted. Because Reno's troops lost their mobility, the Indians were able to maneuver around the skirmish line. What was supposed to be an attack became first a defensive line. Then, as Reno couldn't hold it, he ordered his men to fall back toward the river, where their defense was even less effective. As the fighting intensified, he lost his nerve and ordered a retreat. Reno completely abandoned his men, thinking only of his own safety. Instead of an orderly retreat, it became a rout. Many of his men did not make it across the river, where Biff, Lieutenant Tom Weir, and a couple of the other officers finally managed to establish a defense. When Benteen arrived, Biff thought their units would merge, then move forward to relieve the pressure on Custer. There, he saw the body of First Sergeant Frank Varden, Biff's closest friend in the regiment, and he felt a particular loss seeing Frank lying among the many wounded and dead. Biff dismounted and kneeled next to his friend. Biff, when me and you get out of the army, what do you say we open us up a saloon? Sounds good to me, Biff replied. What'll we call it? Johnson and Varden? Nah, we'll give it a good name. We'll call it Fiddler's Green. My friend, Biff said quietly, you're at Fiddler's Green now. Save a place for me. I'll be along one of these days. As he turned over First Sergeant Varden's body, he found a guidon Varden had tucked into his shirt. This guidon, Biff said quietly in the saloon, looking at the one he was holding in his hand. As he put the swallow-tailed flag back in its place, the memories of that battle faded away, sight and sound, tone and tint. He had opened his saloon, and as Varden had suggested, he called it Fiddler's Green. Cavalry legend has it that anyone who has ever served as a cavalryman will, after they die, stop by Fiddler's Green, a shady glen where the grass is good and a nearby stream of cool water provides for the horses. There, cavalrymen from all wars and generations will drink beer, chew tobacco, smoke their pipes, and visit. They will regale one another with tales of derring-do, until that last syllable of recorded time, at which moment they will bid each other a last goodbye before departing for their final and eternal destination. The front door opened and 4 people walked in: Duff, Megan Parker, Elmer, and Wang.
You mean the sheriff ain't closed this place as a health hazard yet?
Elmer called out. I've got my rats and roaches trained, Biff replied. They run away and hide any time a sheriff's deputy comes in here.
Now you see there, Wang? If roaches can be taught, why, I bet even you could learn something,
Elmer teased. If I am walking with 2 other men, each of them will serve as my teacher. I will pick out the good points of the one and imitate them, and the bad points of the other and correct them in myself, Wang replied.
That's one of them things that heathen feller Confucian is always saying, ain't it?
Confucius, Wang corrected.
Well, hell, ain't that what I done just said?
Megan laughed. Elmer, I suggest that you stop now before you get yourself in any deeper.
Yeah, well, I was going to stop anyhow. I thought we'd come in here for a drink.
Use my table, Biff invited.
Chapter 2. Duff, Megan, Elmer, and Wang sat at Biff's private table having a drink. There had been a time when a few of the customers had questioned Wang Chow's right to be in Fiddler's Green, but Biff had let them know, in no uncertain terms, that Wang would always be welcome. And because Fiddler's Green was a particularly nice saloon, no stigma was ever attached to a woman being there. Megan felt quite comfortable in the environment.
Listen, if you happen to see one of them silver hat bands, I'd like you to buy it for me, Elmer said. I can give you some money for it now, or you can just tell me how much it costs and I'll pay you when you get back. I think one of them silver hat bands would make me look just real elegant.
Elegant, you say? Aren't you displaying a bit of vanity there, Elmer? Megan asked, a little laugh showing that she was teasing.
Well, here's the thing, Miss Megan. If I don't brag on myself, who will? You know Duff ain't going to do it, and the heathen there, why, he don't even know what bragging is.
Megan laughed. You do have a point. I'll look for it for you, Elmer. I'm going to be doing quite a bit of shopping for my store.
Thank you, ma'am,
Elmer said.
What about you, Wang? What could we be getting for you from the big city?
Duff asked.
I want nothing.
How long do you think you'll be gone? Biff asked.
2 or 3 days, Duff said. You heard the lass. She wants to tarry a bit, and I'll be there with her until she's done.
There's no need for you to stay with me, Duff. I can get home by myself, Megan said.
Ha! You don't understand, Miss Megan. He ain't worried none about you getting back by your own self. He's worried about him getting back by his own self,
Elmer said, and the others laughed. Megan glanced toward the clock. The train is due within the next half hour. Don't you think it might be a good idea to go down to the depot now?
Aye, Duff replied. I'll be for wanting to check on the cattle one more time before we leave, so now's a good time to do it. Have a good trip, and don't be doing anything I wouldn't do, Biff said as they stood from the table to leave.
Damn, Biff, you've just told them they can do anything they want to do, 'cause just what is it that you wouldn't do?
Elmer teased. At that same moment, 1 mile west of Chugwater, Lou Martell, a man of some disrepute, and 3 others, just as disreputable, were breaking camp.
You sure this fellow we're looking for is in Chugwater?
Deacus Carlotti asked.
I read about him in a newspaper that picked up a story from the Chugwater Defender. It said a Chinaman named Wang Chow worked for a rancher here by the name of Duff MacCallister. And this Chinaman come from China, so you know it's the self-same one.
Carlotti laughed.
Well, hell, don't all Chinamen come from China?
Did you come from Italy? Martell asked.
What? No, I was born in Arkansas.
Yeah? Well, most of the Chinamans here was born here too. But this here Wang Chow was born in China, and he killed some important people there. Now China has put out a reward of $100,000 to anyone who can bring him in or kill him.
Hey, Martell, if we capture this Chinaman, we won't have to be taking him all the way back to China, will we?
No. There's these fellas in San Francisco called the Dongs or something like that. If we can get him to them Dongs...
I think it is Tong, Gabe Kellis said.
Yeah, the Tong. Anyway, all we got to do is prove to the Tong that he's been killed. We can do that by taking his head back to him. And when we do that, they'll give us $25,000, Martell said.
Wait! I thought you said this here Chinaman was worth $100,000.
The protest came from a man named Emmett Willard.
It's only $100,000 if we take his head all the way to China, Martell replied. Do you really want to do that? Anyhow, when's the last time you ever had $25,000?
I ain't never had me no $25,000.
Well, all we got to do to get it is kill us a Chinaman. And just how hard do you think that will be?
Here's what I'm worried about, though, Carlotti said. If we just up and kill him, What about the sheriff? Ain't we liable to have to deal with him on account of we murdered someone?
We don't need to be a-worrying none about no sheriff, Martell said. He held up a piece of paper. This here paper is a reward from China. All we have to do is show the sheriff this paper.
How's the sheriff going to read it if it's in Chinese? Carlotti asked.
It's in Chinese, and it's also in American, Martell said.
Kellis laughed.
There ain't no such thing as an American language.
What the hell do you think we're talking in now if it ain't American? Martell asked.
English, Kellis said. We're talking English.
I always thought that was the same thing, Martell said. All right, boys, put out the fire. We're fixing to go into town and make us a lot of money.
As Duff, Megan, Elmer, and Wang walked toward the depot, they could smell the closely packed cattle from Sky Meadow and hear the almost human bawling cries they were making because the change in their environment made them anxious. 500 head of Black Angus cattle had been crowded into the loading pens at the Chugwater depot. Duff had sold the cattle to a Kansas City cattle broker who would take delivery of and pay for them in Cheyenne. The recently built railroad from Fort Laramie to Cheyenne took its route through Chugwater. What used to be a 2-day hard drive of the cattle had been reduced to a little more than 2 hours. The railroad would have put a caboose on one of the leased trains, and he and Megan could have ridden for no additional cost had he wanted, but he'd passed on the offer. He wanted to be in Cheyenne before the leased trains arrived so he could see to their distribution there. He wasn't worried about leaving the cattle behind. Elmer and Wang, two of his best men and closest friends, were remaining. Duff was confident they would see to the shipment of the cattle.
Elmer, as soon as you get the beasties loaded, you and Wang can be for taking a little time off while Megan and I see to the business in Cheyenne. Now, just what do you think me and this heathen can find to do while you two is gone? Elmer asked.
Well, I don't know what you two might find to do, but perhaps Vi Winslow and May Lynn would have a suggestion, Duff replied with a smile.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about them, Elmer said.
Elmer, you wouldn't want me to tell Vi that you had forgotten about her, would you? Megan teased.
No. Now, there ain't no call for you to go and do nothing like that, Elmer protested. She might not never let me have no more of them pies she bakes.
Vi Winslow owned Vi's Pies, a small but one of the more successful businesses in Chugwater. She was an attractive widow in her early 40s who had shown an interest in Elmer, and that interest was reciprocated. Train comes. Wang didn't engage in banter, not because he was aloof, but because English was a second language to him.
What train? I don't hear no train, Elmer challenged.
Train comes, Wang repeated. Look, he pointed north. There, barely discernible, was a thin ribbon of smoke.
Oh, yeah. Well, sure, I mean if you're talking about that train. Now that you mention it, I see it too, Elmer replied. I just didn't know which train you were talking about.
Half an hour later, with goodbyes said and final instructions given, Duff and Megan boarded the train, then took a seat in the day coach, all they would require for a trip less than 2 hours. Megan wasn't traveling with Duff only because they were friends, though indeed their relationship was quite close. Like Elmer, she was a partner in ownership of the cattle that were being sold, so even if their personal relationship hadn't been close, she had every right to represent her interest. Duff, do you think Elmer and Vi will ever get married? Duff chuckled.
I'd not be for knowing that, lass. And you have to admit that Elmer is a cantankerous old chancer.
And here you are speaking with a wee bit of the unfathomable Scottish talk. What would chancer be? Megan asked, perfectly mimicking Duff's Scottish brogue.
Va mi a smonjahach go ro tu ach jonsaha achanan, Duff said in Scottish Gaelic.
Tommy ach jonsaha achanan, Megan said, getting exactly the roll and lilt in her response. Then she repeated in English, I am learning the language. Duff laughed. Sure now, lass. And your words make me think I'm back in the heather again. Chancer means that Elmer has a wee bit of the chicanery about him. But even so, 'tis a good man he is. You're lucky. No, we're lucky to have two such... She paused, searching for the right word. Remarkable men as friends. Aye, lass, we are indeed. Shortly after the train left the station, Duff thought about the woman sitting beside him. Back in Scotland there had been Skye MacGregor, the woman he had planned to marry. But on the very day before they were to wed, she was murdered by a dishonest sheriff, and that had caused Duff to seek revenge. His success in exacting vengeance forced him to leave Scotland, thus accounting for his presence in America. He'd thought he would never meet another woman to fill his heart as Skye had done. But to his surprise, Megan had done just that. Feeling her so close and breathing in her perfume, he could almost believe she was the only woman he had ever felt that way about. Chapter 3. After Elmer had seen the train off, he glanced up at the clock.
We got us an hour until the first one of them 2 trains Duff ordered will get here. That's just about time enough to have us a piece of pie. You want to come with me?
You go. I think it would be better if I stay here and wait for the train,
Wang said.
Uh-huh. You're sure you ain't planning on stealing them cows soon as I'm gone?
I have thought about this, Wang said, going along with the tease. But I do not think I can do this by myself.
Well, there you go then, Elmer said. There ain't no need for me to be a-staying here to keep an eye on you. I'm going to have me a piece of pie, but I'll be back before the first train gets here.
Please tell Zhang Nurshi Vai of my good wish for her, Wang said.
I'll do that, but don't you be going after my woman. You got one of your own,
Elmer said, smiling to ameliorate his words. Vi's Pies was quite busy when Elmer arrived, so he just ordered a piece of apple pie. Then, sitting at a corner table by himself, he had time to think, and he thought of the events of his life that had brought him to this place and this time. He had a background of experiences that far predated his arrival in Chugwater and his employment at Sky Meadow. It could be said that he was, more than most men, the sum total of all his experiences. During the Civil War, Elmer had ridden with Quantrill's irregulars. After the war was over, some of the men who had ridden with Quantrill and who had nothing to come back to continued just as they had before. Jesse and Frank James were such men, and for a short while, Elmer had been a member of the James gang. But in a fortuitous bit of timing, he left the gang just before their infamous and disastrous Northfield raid. Going west, he lived with the Indians for a while. Then, drifting even farther west, he signed on to the crew of a merchant ship at San Francisco. For 5 years, Elmer sailed the seas, visiting exotic ports of call from the South Sea Islands to India, the Philippines, Japan, and China, rising in rating from an able-bodied seaman to bosun's mate. His thoughts turned to his time aboard the Eliza Jane. July 10th, 1872, at sea. Most of the sailors on board were recent additions to the crew. They were 15 days out of Sofala, Mozambique, when Elmer learned they were planning a mutiny. He went to the captain with the information.
How many are there?
Captain Chambers asked.
There's at least 15 of them, Elmer replied. I don't know, maybe even as many as 20.
That's more than half the crew, Captain Chambers said. Lord help us. We'll never be able to stand them off.
Yeah, but they ain't none of them will have guns, Elmer said. I will have a gun.
But you are just one man, the captain said, his voice laced with concern.
I'll have a gun, Elmer repeated.
It was 3 days later before the mutineers decided to put their plan in action. As chief bosun, Elmer was on the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?